And now all of a sudden, I mean, I just, you take your car to the mechanic. It's like, oh, it needs a new radiator. I don't know. Like, what should I look at? It gives you like the complete undress of the whole thing. And it's just like, it's a capability that unless you have a friend who's like a car expert that you bring with you never would have had to do that. You would have just given up from the very beginning. And now you've got something that's happy to hold your hand through it and happy to make.
But you don't have to sell me on it.
Yeah.
I'm a giant fan. I think it's pretty fantastic in terms of just use.
Yes.
Like in daily life.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of information from it. I use it for if I'm ever writing. I keep like my phone open, and so I have my computer on and my phone on and I started asking questions to the phone. Just ask Perplexity, like, what is this? Why is that? Well, when did this start? Why did people start doing that? And what's the argument against it? What's this and what's that? When did Spain invade Mexico? When did people start speaking Spanish over there? Like that kind of shit. And you said something interesting. You said, you think 3 months ago.
Wait, what?
Did artificial general intelligence. So I forgot the name. I can't remember on the name, but the test.
No, the Turing test.
Alan Turing.
Okay, so
Couldn't remember his name. Do you think it's there?
Yeah, for sure. So
But that should be like massive news.
Correct.
This is what's confusing.
Correct, and I totally agree with you. And we in the industry talk about this all the time. This is not massive news.
Right.
And so so for people who haven't heard of the Turing test, the Turing test was for 60 years. It was the gold standard for figuring out whether AI was or not.
Right.
The basic goal of the Turing test was can you, a human being, can you tell whether you're talking to another human being, or basically a check on whether you're talking to a bot. And for 60 years, it was impossible. Many people tried to write software to test the Turing test. Nobody ever succeeded. We blew right through the Turing test over the Christmas holiday of 2022. We just blew right past it. We blew past it so fast and so hard, nobody has even bothered to do it past it. Maybe there's probably a handful of papers where somebody's actually formally done it, but like we blew through it like tissue paper. To the point where it was not even. It is, and again, older people in the industry, we're just like, wow. Exactly your reaction. Like that seems like it should have been a big deal. It's like, oh no, that was like yesterday's news. Like that it turned out. Well, what we now this is part of it. What we now know is it actually turned out to be easy. Part of the miracle of what we have now. There's now a large language model that this guy Andrew Karpathy is one of the leading experts in the space. He's developed a large language model with 300 lines of software code. There are people who are back-porting large language models to run on PC support system. You can run, somebody's got, people have been running on it. I saw somebody has a large language model running on a Texas Instrument calculator. And so it just,
I think this one is
this is a huge surprise. It turns out
better than Deadlock V3 at least.
There were a handful of conceptual breakthroughs that had to happen. So-called neural networks, transformer, reinforcement learning. So you'll hear these technical terms. But when you add them all up, you basically have it. That takes me to what's happening in the data centers. So what's happening in the data centers is two things. What's called training and what's called inference. So the training part is basically taking the world's accumulated information, every bit of information. And by the way, a lot of that is just they call it. Just like pull down every sentence paper, every Reddit post, every tweet. They take every text, every public domain textbook and every whatever PDF and every possible thing. And then these companies now, by the way, are going out and gathering data, they're buying data, they're generating data, they're hiring thousands of people to generate data, and all kinds of things. These companies are actually hiring like thousands of lawyers and doctors. So anyway, you gather up all this data and then you do what's called training. And so you train the system. You basically smush all this data together. And that gets the thing up and running. But the training is not one time. It turns out as these models, every time you want a new version of the model that's more capable, you have to retrain. Right? So you train, and then immediately when you're done training that model, you immediately start training. So this is kind of a perpetual treadmill. So there's the training side. That's important. And then there's what's called inference. The inference is what happens when it gets so when you ask it, when people start speaking Spanish, it's doing inference. And so that's what you do.
So the Turing test got blown through in 2022.
Yeah.
So where are we at in 2026?
Yeah. So it's better than, as I said, most people I know who use the leading edge models and take it seriously will say that they are better, they give you better answers than anything percent. kind of like every topic. Well, I'll give you an example. So we're going to use coding a lot as we talk about this. Because coding. So it turns out, of everything these things are good at, coding is the thing that they're the best at. Writing software code. And the reason they're the best at that is because these companies, or the AI companies themselves, are in the business of writing software code. So the thing that they're most excited about automating is that they were doing stuff. So it's like the shoemaker assignment issues, or the shoemaker issues. So these companies are the furthest ahead of coding. 9 months ago, there was this concept called vibe coding, for sort of writing code. You just call the AI to write the code for you, and then there's this concept of slop, which is it gives you that code default people were kind of direction this idea. Over the holiday break of the end of 2025, many of the world's best coders put their hands up online. So there's been a breakthrough in code. So, for example, Linus Torvalds, of Linux, John Carmack, who created Doom, who did the Saw, like these guys say, it's so that's happening. And then everything else is coming. Look, everything else coming right behind. Medicine's right behind. Laws right behind. All these domains. Pick a domain. By the way, science. By the way, the scientific breakthroughs that are not this way. So biology, chemistry, physics, economics, mathematics.
You can put your blood work in, and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong with you.
100%. Okay, so I have tons of examples. I have a friend who's extremely advanced on this, and he has used the AI coding ability to build the most comprehensive. It's almost like a Star Trek. It's like
Deadass?
Star Trek.
Vibe coding for real?
It's the most complete health dashboard you could possibly imagine. You got his genome decoded. You can now get your whole genome decoded now. I think it's for $200. You can, it's better than it used to cost like $100 million.
Right.
And now it's like $200.
And it took forever to do.
It took forever to do. The guy, Craig Venter, who invented the thing, just passed away. He's spent 30 years basically. It succeeded in figuring out how to do this. But you can get your whole genome decoded, so all of your DNA information, all your genetics. And which is really important because it's like forecasting like future odds of breast cancer, Parkinson's, drug interactions. Like I have a mutation. I have a specific mutation where there's the standard kind of heart medications that give you if you have a heart attack work with me, so you have to tell the pregnancy risk for the other one. So like genetic information is become very valuable. So you put your genome in, you put your blood test in, so you just get a blood, you go to one of the labs and you use your blood test. And then you connect your like Apple Watch to it, so it has like your blood pressure. And you give it, so you basically just like feed in all that information. And it just gives him the most spectacular. And then you basically just say, all right, what do I need to do? Right, and of course that's the question you have to want to ask. Right? Okay, right. You need this supplement. You need to get this checked. You need to put your sleep in it.
Finally, some raw skill level.
So it walks
Not
you
as
through it. And by the way,
crazy
it's like, okay, now I
memory
need
as
to lose weight, I need to do whatever. Okay, now give me the diet to go with that. Give me the thing. So my friend actually pushed it, and this is where you got to decide how you want to use it, because he pushed it a step further. It kept telling me, listen, you wasn't getting hydrated enough. And so it said, I want you to do whatever it takes to make sure that I can. And so it started washing his webcams. Drinking enough water, and then it started praising him when it saw him walking over to the bridge to the water. And so, like, it's the genie in the bottle. Like, you got to decide what you're going to ask it. At that point, okay, I have another friend. I'll give you another example, one you might like. So I have a friend who's super into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so he has two webcams in his home gym. And he has his AI watch.
Is this Zuckerberg?
I don't want to dox him, but have you heard the story?
No.
Okay, then I will neither confirm nor deny.
Okay, I can text him.
You can text
I'm
him.
sure it's him.
You can text. So these models are what's called multimodal, which means they can process text, but they can also process images and video and audio. You can feed in all kinds of information. So he has his webcam in his gym, watch him doing his sparring, and then it gives him performance feedback.
Whoa!
Right, because it analyzes images, and so you can ask the capabilities. I mean, are just like they're just like mind-boggling in their scope, and this is going to be basically in every field. It's important to go through this though, because of course the public discussion on this is just like relentless, right? And in particular, the thing is happening. The immediate sort of conclusion of the machine is doing something.
This is what.
But and we talked about that, but this is the point that I'm making is you got to start on day one of this to really understand. You got to start on day one being like everybody gets superpowers. Right. And by the way, this technology,
This is
another thing people really worry about is that this technology gets centralized into the companies and that they're not going to access the exact problem.
That is the crazy equation.
These companies are driving this technology into everybody's hands. And there's now a billion people through that. And so this technology has democratized faster than any technology in history. And so everybody's getting access to it.
Right. If you have a smartphone, you have access.
You have a smartphone. Right. And so the way to think about the overwhelming impact of this is positive. The reason for that is universal basic superheroes, right? Like universal basic, everybody gets the world's best doctor, the lawyer, every domain. Jiu-jitsu coach. Exactly.
Right.
Independent of their income level, independent of where they live, independent of their circumstances.
Right.
Everybody gets access. And so there are for sure going to be downsides, and there's for sure going to be, all kinds of things. But the upside aspect of this and where the size is staggering. And by the way, you have this dislocation happening already with usually the polling that basically shows this sort of with the response. I actually don't believe that for two reasons. One is that you won't always want to watch what people do, not what they say. And what they're doing is the reason. Yeah. And
Well, who's making the polls?
So the polls are, there's many different ways to make polls, and in some cases it's interested parties. So it'll be the press will do a poll or try to get them to do a poll to be able to write their stories and stuff like that after this really want to share something. There's even a form of polling called quick polling, where you construct a polling question specifically to change people's minds. Right. You get a poll that says, did you know Spencer Pratt is a strength case? Right. And you say, no, I didn't know that. Back in the day. Oh, I didn't know that. Right. And so there's those kinds of polls. I like the kind of poll if we could put up the graphic that I sent.
Yes.
Which I think is really illustrative of this. I like the poll that does what David showed us with. Who's one of the famous weapons. So this is from a weapons poster. Okay. So David showed us. This is the one with the stack chart that has it's like a bar chart on the side. Yeah. Okay. So this just came out. So this is a forum. So it's all the different political issues that people are worried about. All the issues they're worried about in their lives that are relevant to who they vote for.
Cost of living, number one. Economy, number two. Political corruption, number three. Boy. Inflation, healthcare, taxes, government spending. So it gets down to AI is ranked 29 out of 39 issues. That's currently. Currently, yeah. And by the way, look, it may rise. That's very interesting, but it's above race relations.
Okay, so this is what I really want to talk about. Okay, so below AI, this is really interesting. Race, guns, gas, the climate,
childcare,
childcare, which is a certain economic thing, abortion, and then way down at the bottom, LGBT.
Yeah,
all the woke issues have died.
Yeah,
they have evaporated. They're done. I mean, at least for now. Think about how intense race, abortion, guns, and LGBT issues were.
Right.
2 years ago.
What do you think happened?
People are done. They're tired, they're done, they're burned out, they're turned
Well, there's too many people that were drifted, right?
Drifting, it turned out to be only people were stealing money to buy country houses in California. Like literally the whitest, by the way, literally the whitest zip code. All of a sudden. Could we just keep that up for a second? I just want to show a couple more things. And so first it's really interesting. So below the line, the woke issues are just that, and the activists are still fired up in the whole thing. But like the voters, at least when you ask them to stack rank their issues, the voters are like this.
LGBT is
at the very bottom. And this is not to say the issues are not actually important to the people unaffected and like that. It's just the voters are like, you did that. At the very least, we're going to pause for a while and focus on other things. And then, as you immediately picked up at the very top, the economic issues are out there. Right?
Yes.
Which, by the way, this makes sense because of the the inflation that we've been through. And then if you kind of tally up at the top there, some of these are kind of so cost of living. I would argue cost of living, the economy, inflation, taxes and government spending, budget deficit, government debt. So I would say like 4 of the top 10 is the same issue, and the same issue is everything's too expensive. Right, funding. Right. And I think you're seeing that tilt in our politics right now, right? Where all the racial identity stuff is maybe social, economic, social,
Right.
kind of escalates. But then, okay, so that's the second point. And then the third point is, yeah, and then you get on the list, you get into like, okay, immigration's pretty far up there, crime's pretty far up there, Medicare, Social Security, people are, of course, always worried about.
Income inequality is only 2 notches above artificial intelligence. That's interesting.
Yeah, so this, okay, so yeah, this is interesting, right? Because
Voting rights.
yeah. But income inequality. So income inequality is like the most left-wing framing of the economic issue, and it shows that the most. This goes back to our. It's almost like saying that people are pro-socialism. Right? It's kind of coded that way.
Right.
In people's minds. And so the fact that pulls poorly, and that really, and that number one thing is just the thing that people are focused on. And again, this makes sense. Everybody in their lives, every time you go to just like a normal restaurant, you see this. Go to the grocery store, you see this. Right. And so anyway, so this puts it in perspective. And then the other interesting thing is, yeah, it's pretty perspective. And so the press is doing everything they can to fight out the whole everybody freaked out.
It's interesting. Immigration is very high up there.
It is. And by the way, I don't think it's an accident for crime because at least in the population, those issues. Yeah.
Okay.
Border security is out there. By the way, drug addiction, drug abuse addictions.
Yes.
And then to your point, there's more.
Yeah.
And by the way, war in the Middle East, to your point, is above race, violence, abortion. And,
Because it's tangible. Especially race. So,
yeah. So anyways, so AI is a political issue. It will be a political issue. There are people on both sides. Both Brody and Tucker are on this now. So there's going to be
right now it hasn't taken jobs, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so low.
Yeah. So, and then this is the thing, and this is why I wanted to go through the good news story first. I think the unemployment thing is a win. I literally don't think that's and it's not a claim that there won't be jobs in because of course there are. I think every consumer behavior change causes jobs.
But haven't a lot of tech firms fired a lot of people because of AI?
Okay, so two things have happened. So two things have happened. One is there have been a small set of companies that have done layoffs and they blend AI. I will tell you they were overstaffed. So there's some truth and there's some spin. The truth is the tech companies are adopting AI very quickly. The truth is, and we'll talk about this in code. The truth is you can generate the same amount of code with this one. That's true. So you may not have as many code. The actual reality is these companies are hiring like crazy, including, by the way, the AI companies are hiring like crazy. The AI companies are hiring like absolutely crazy. And so there's a small amount of that. But
what are they hiring people for?
Like everything under the sun, including coding. Okay, so let's talk about coding specifically. Okay, so here's what's actually happened with coding. Here's what's interesting. So everybody I know who uses AI for coding, you would think basically one of two things would have happened. One is they just would be out of the profession entirely, because there's no point anymore. Or you would think, well, maybe they just have a better life now because they're working less. Right? So coding, AI coding makes them 4 times more productive. They can write 4 times the amount of code and save more time. What's actually happened is virtually to a person that all to the point where there is a new term from art that's used in the valley called the AI vampire, which is it's when AI turns you into a vampire. You're up all night doing AI coding because you are so productive, you're getting so much done. The opportunity cost of going to sleep is too high. Because if you go to sleep, you won't be with your 20 AI coding agents keeping them working on all the projects. And so people stop sleeping. And so I have all these friends, some of whom are quite famous, where when you talk to them now, as opposed to 2 months ago, they look terrible. They're sleep deprived, bags under their eyes. They're clearly not going to do themselves. And they're absolutely ecstatic because they are able to produce 5 times, 10 times, 20 times more code per hour. And so they are just absolutely ripping through every project that they've ever wanted to work, every code project. I have a Wall Street friend who has a computer science degree like 35 years ago. He was very successful in Wall Street, so he stopped coding. I was just with him this week. He picked up coding with AI. He's completely re-automated his entire house. So he's got like AI jukebox.
But why? But why? But why do you want to automate your own whole house?
And he keeps running Kali.
Why do you want to do that? Are you that lazy? You fuck. What? Why do you want to do that?
He's got like the digital music.
But why?
So that, like,
AI automate your whole damn house,
and
bro.
this is what, by the
You
way,
might
this
as
is
well
the same
turn
thing.
into a fucking AI yourself.
In the companies, in the leading edge tech companies, the coders that are using AI, the estimate is right now is 20 times more productive. So they're generating 20 times more output per hour. And then you just think, like, logically, what does that mean? Okay, so if there's only a limited amount of software that people want in the world, then yeah, you're going to get less components. But then there's the elasticity of that, right? Which is, what if it becomes super cheap to get code? It turns out there's way more demand for code in the world than we're ever able to be satisfied. Every company I know has 1,000 things that they wanted to have code for that they've never been able to get to. Just the projects that never get cut, or the projects that aren't fun. And all of a sudden, so these companies are like ripping out code. They're releasing products at a far faster rate of speed. They're adding like features that are much better. They've moved into turbo code. And in fact, what's happened is coding salaries have correspondingly inflated. So the top coders in yeah, because right, like they've got the silver bullet, they've got the philosophy, right? Okay,
Is this sustainable?
yeah. I mean, not only is this sustainable, this is going to intensify. So
I don't
yeah, sure. Yeah. Show go down. So let me tell you what they're doing, because then I'll tell you what's going to happen.
Okay.
Okay.
I think this talk is.
Yes. So chilling in.
Go ahead.
Okay. So software coding a year ago was you sit there and you write code, and then you try to run the code, and there's bugs in the code, and you have to fix the bugs. It's just whatever. You just
Right.
sit there and do it. By the way, the fundamental challenge every programmer has ever had is like code is complicated, and so if you're writing all the code, you gotta have it like loaded into your brain. And so there's like this spin-up process, like you have to spend like 2 hours refamiliarizing your brain with stuff the codes, work for 10 hours, spend 2 hours trying to So that's the old model. The new model is you work with a coding agent or a bot, a coding bot. And these products have names like Claude Code or Cursor or Codex. There's a whole bunch of these. And in this model, it's like working with ChatGPT, but like specifically for code. And so what you're doing is you're giving the bot an assignment. And you're saying, write me the code to do whatever. I want a new level in the video game where people can jump, or whatever the thing is. You give it the assignment. And then it goes off for 10 minutes. It writes all the code and does its thing, and then it comes back to you like a puppy, and it's like, oh, here's the result. And then you then evaluate its result, you run the thing, and you look at what it's done, and then you say, oh, that was great, we'll move on to the next project, or you say, no, that's not quite right, that's not what I meant, I wanted to jump twice as high, I wanted to really bounce off the seat, off the walls, and then it does it again. And then, so you get in this feedback loop where you're like talking about it every 2 minutes. Okay, so then it's like, what do you do during that 10-minute break is you open up another pane in the browser window and you create the second one. You start to give it a second, right? Okay, so now you're checking the 2 buttons every 10 minutes, but that's still review whatever 9 minutes. And 3 times. So then you create the third bot, the fourth bot, the fifth bot. The state of the art today is and this is what the AI vampires are doing. This is why people can't go to sleep. Is because you've got 20 AI bots that are all as good as the best programmers in the world, that are doing exactly what you tell them to do on every project you work on. And they're running 24/7. And the only thing you have to do is be there every 2 minutes to give you different feedback.
Oh my God.
Right. And so you can imagine how hard it would be to plug it. And that's why there's an Apple night, and that's why there's an Apple.
How much have Adderall sales gone through the roof?
Probably a fair amount, because everybody stopped eating and drinking. Probably a lot. Okay. So that's the state of the art today. What's the obvious next step? The obvious next step is the bots should have bots. Oh, right. Managers, right? You should have managers, right? And so you should have a bot that's overseeing bots. And this is what's starting right now. Right? So each bot should be able to itself create subbots, right? And then you have a bot that gives out this bots. And so then, and this is just starting right now. But like when we're sitting here in a year, I think it's going to be routine to have 10 to 20 bots, each that have 10 bots. Right? And if you think about it, this exactly mirrors what happens when a company grows, right? Which is, a company grows, you don't just hire 100 people. Right? And then you end up with
This
an organization.
is a little
And so
weird.
that's what's going to happen. You're going to end up overseeing bots. And then, of course, a year after that, it's going to be bots. Bots. So then you're going to have 2 layers of reporting. And then you're going to have individual programmers that are overseeing the bots. Which means you're going to have individual programmers that are 1,000 times more. Right. And so now you've given every programmer in the world this level of superpower and capability. And you see what I'm saying? It's true that they're not writing the code themselves, but they're overseeing the entire thing. They're directing the entire thing. They're developing the strategy. It's their product set that's going into it. It's their business goals. They can let their imagination completely fly. But, by the way, this also goes back to the thing. The bots never get frustrated with you. Right. So you tell a normal person, you hire somebody over here, you hire somebody here, and you tell them you want a screen display, you want a screen animated. Okay, they spend 2 weeks doing it. They bring it to you. They like, okay, that's pretty good, but I actually want the whole thing. Spend a week doing that. They're like, I actually prefer the whole version. The other gets like pissed off because it's like, I'm just wasting my time. The bot's like, no problem. No sweat. Like whatever you want, and we can try it 12 more times if you want. And if you want, I can create sub-bots to go do 12 more times. Right? Or you tell it, this is terrible. Like, I can't believe it's exactly what this. It doesn't look like this. Oh, I'm so sorry. I did these things.
That's
Right.
exactly
And by the way,
what I fucking
it never
hate.
gets drunk. It never gets sick. Never gets high.
Right. Never gets depressed because his girlfriend broke up with him.
Never files a complaint.
Right.
Right. And so, you see what I'm saying? And so all of this is the workplace version of what I described earlier. So all of a sudden, everybody in the workplace has this basically what is this carbon box. So then it's going to start with coders, but then it's going to be every other job, right? So it's going to be every writer. You're already doing it. Every writer's going to have it. Every lawyer's going to have it. Every doctor's going to have it. But doctors are already okay. So this is the other thing is. There's all these questions about like when is the medical profession going to adopt AI? Because it's incredible capability, but there's no concept of AI doctor, and you still have to wait for the doctor, and the AI doctor can't write prescriptions. So, and then every hospital board is trying to figure out what to do with it. So that the American Medical Association is trying to figure out what to do with it. So there's this big question of like how it's going to get absorbed in the medical system. Well, there's that, but then there's also just every doctor is doing it themselves anyway. And they are, because of course they are, right? And so every doctor, like the minute you leave the exam room, the doctor's like asking ChatGPT, like, okay, what's going on with this guy?
Right.
Because it's the easy thing. And I've talked to friends who have gone to the doctor and they've actually been sitting with the doctor in the exam room. The doctor turns around to the PC on the desk and just types the thing in ChatGPT right there. And of course, at that point, you're asking this question, like, what do I need you for? Right. But like, this is my point. Like, every doctor is going to have. Also, all of a sudden, every doctor gets so much better because every doctor has this thing now that it makes the doctor an expert in every possible medical condition.
I'm seeing this all lay out, and it's kind of terrifying. In the not in a bad way.
Sure.
The exponential increase is part of what's freaking me out right now because I'm laying it out in my head. I'm like seeing where this goes, and I'm like, what does the world look like in 20 years?
Right. So in 20 years, there are many important questions within that. But one of them is the number of AI bots in a way. Orders of magnitude. Right. By definition. Well, let's just start with, okay. To start with, what do we know about okay, let's think about this, right? So what do we know about the global population, right? So what do we know about the global population? We know it's going to shrink, right? There's 2 things we know for sure. The global population is going to shrink a lot because people aren't having kids anywhere near this rate. And then the other is the no, it's going to which is another consequence of that. So the world population is going to get smaller, right? And so one is like we're literally going to need workers, right? And there's only basically 3 ways to get workers. Like one is to like reproduce, which we, in a lot of places, especially in the West, we've largely stopped doing. A second thing to do is import huge numbers of people, and go through everything entailed in that, which is what we're dealing with in our colleges right now. And the third is we have AI, right? And so they're going to be billions of these bots running around doing all kinds of stuff. And they're just, 20 years from now, we're going to control those, and so they're just going to be in our daily lives. They're going to be what this happens. The other thing that's going to happen is robots. Right? And so everything that we've talked about so far here is that software AI, right? So it's just apps and software. We all believe in the industry, we all believe that within a small number of years, we're going to have the ChatGPT moment to roll out. Physical AI. And it's going to be amazing and a little bit strange when it starts because you're going to have these robots and it's not necessarily traditional. It's also going to be like
Well, this is why Elon canceled the Model S and the Model X to make room at his Tesla factories for more Optimus robots.
and that's why he created and this and I'll obviously this is Elon has now this full master plan for everything where it all fits together and there's two sides to the robots for the software. There's two sides to the robots. There's the autonomy, which is their ability to navigate in the real world, which is going to be a derivation of the self-driving system of the cars, which is the reason why he only ever built self-driving cars with cameras, because the robots are not going to have cameras, right? So the robots are going to be able to navigate the world inside the cars. So there's that side of the robot brain.
Also, because LiDAR goes down and the power grid goes out.
And with that, and connectivity and all these things. So, Elon's the whole principle on this is if a human being can do it, it's high. Robots going to be good. But the other side is XAI, Grok, which is the interface to how we're going to talk to the robot, right? And so the ability to literally talk to the robot and have robot like that. And so it's going to be like all the science fiction, all the new Superman movie had a great portrayal of robots and just like super happy to see Superman, super happy to see propaganda. Exactly, robot propaganda. Exactly. And so those are going to be those are going to be, and again, it's going to be. But again, think about the manual labor. Think about the manual labor aspect, which is like, okay, what if everybody all of a sudden, like, what if just all of a sudden everybody on the planet has a robot that does all the things, does like change the sheets and you got to do the laundry and you got to read the yard and okay, you start with one. And it's like, wow, I'd like to actually have my whole house run this way.
You got robot staff.
And then you've got 10, right? And then you've got, 100.
Connected to flock cameras. And the government is watching everything you do from inside your house.
Okay, well, and then you come to the China topic, which is the good news on AI is that the U.S. is ahead on the software of AI. The bad news is we're way behind on robots. And so if nothing changes, all the software is going to get built in the U.S., but all the robots are going to get built in China. And then you have the super intense version of that problem, which is how do you really feel about a world in which all the robots sitting right behind, watching everything. And then, of course, robots being in the physical world are potential, they can do bad things, right? So it will work itself.
Here's the question also about AI. At what point in time does the AI stop listening to us?
So this is the thing. So I think that my view of that is it's a sort of, it's called a category error. We have drives. So the way I think about this is human beings are the result of on the order of 4 billion years of evolution, right, from single cell organisms all the way up through ultimately primates and then us. And so we have all these like built-in drives, and it's reproduction and fighting and everything else, and whatever's the drive that causes people to want to create art, or whatever's the drive that causes people to want to create business. These are something innate going on. And these are all kind of derivations or extensions of what we have to survive and thrive. Propagate. Like the AI's